Sinti, Kale, Manush, Romanichal, Horahane, Kalderash. 100 different names for 100 different Romani subgroups, each with their own cultures, histories, and dialects. And it can get confusing, even for Romani people ourselves. And if you try to look it up on the internet, you get a whole bunch of contradicting results written by people who are not of Romani descent. And that leads to a lot of misinformation. And that's what I'm here for. Davin Bachtale, my name is Florian, and I am here to teach you about the Romani subgroups around Lumea, the world. I guess you can call it gypsyography now. Just kidding. So since there are so many different groups, let's start off by making it a little bit easier for ourselves by dividing them into some overarching, more general groups. We can start off with the Kale. In Iberia, we have the Iberian Kale. In Wales, we have the Welsh Kale. And in Finland, we have the Finnish Kale. Now, even though these groups share the same name, they are pretty different from one another, so we'll talk about them as different groups altogether. Then in Central Europe, we have the Sinti Manush. And then north of that, in England and also Scandinavia, we have the Romanishal, and Romani travelers. Then we can go all the way down south to the Balkans, where we have the Horahane, or the Muslim Roma. And then the rest of Europe, in Central and Eastern Europe especially, we have a lot of groups who just identify as Roma or Romani. And then we'll talk about their subgroups within that as well. So within that Roma-Romani group, we can split that down even further into two main groups, the Vlach Roma and the non-Vlach Roma. The Vlach Roma, also called Ola or Vlachuria, are the Roma whose ancestors were enslaved in Romania for 500 years during chattel slavery. Romanian was their main contact language, and after slavery, a lot of these subgroups migrated all over the world. Now, one last thing before we start. Let's talk about some groups that people commonly mistake for Roma, but actually aren't Romani at all. We'll start off in Ireland with the Irish travelers. See, Irish travelers actually aren't Romani. They're actually indigenous Irish people who speak their own language that is not related to Romani. Next, we have the Dom people who live in North Africa and the Middle East. They speak the Domari language, and even though they're not Romani, they're actually a cousin group to us. So we both originate from the same people in India, the Doma people. But then, the Domari people, they left a little bit earlier than us, and they settled in the Middle East and North Africa, while we settled in Europe. And then after both of us came the Lom people, who are also descended from that same origin, but they went and they settled in Armenia. Lastly, let's go talk about the Luli people, who are known as the Central Asian Gypsies because they are also thought to have come from India. However, it's unclear if they're related to us as Romani people. What I do know is that the Ruska Roma unfortunately do not consider them to be related to us. Alright, we're ready to begin our journey. Let's start with the Iberian Peninsula and the Portuguese Iberian Kale that are called the Calons, also known as Ciganos. They mostly live in Brazil and Portugal, and they speak a mixed Romani language that is a mixture of Portuguese with some Romani vocabulary as well. Now, a lot of Calons actually live in Brazil, where they number almost 1 million people. Brazil even had a Calon as their president. Now, their brothers are in Spain, and they are called the Calé, or the Gitanos. You might know them well for the flamenco music, people like Carmen Amaya, La Singla, and more so. They also speak Caló, but their Caló is a mixture of Spanish and Romani vocabulary, and you can also find some Calé in the southern coast of France. Now in the north of Spain and the south of France, there's a region called the Basque Country, and here we can find the Eromintela, who are Basque Romani people that speak the Eromintela language, a mixture of Basque and Romani. Now it is believed that their ancestors came to the Basque Country from the Balkans in around the 15th or 16th century. Now let's go up into France, where we have the main French Romani group called the Manouche. They're also called Gitans. Now you may know them for the Manouche jazz, also called Gypsy jazz. They speak Manouche Romani, which is a Romani dialect that is very similar to Sinti Romani. It just has a lot more French loanwords. Now let's continue our journey up north into the United Kingdom. We'll start off with Wales and the Welsh Calais. Now Calais is one of our historic endonyms, which means black or dark-skinned in the Romani language, and a lot of different Indian languages as well. Now the Welsh Calais, most of them claim descent from a founder called Abram Woods. They used to speak the Welsh Romani language, which was a Romani dialect. However, they do not speak that anymore, unfortunately. Next, we can go into England, where there we find the Romanichal, or Rumnichals, as they call themselves. You also hear them say English Gypsies. Now, they speak the Anglo-Romani language. Here's an example of Anglo-Romani being used. Kushti. Now there's also Romani Chal who migrated over into Scandinavia, and they're called Romani Shal. Groups called the Tatare, which comes from the misconception that they are Tatars, which are a Turkic ethnic group from Central Asia. Think Tatarstan. Now, even though they're not Tatars, they have kind of embraced this exonym. They also speak a dialect of Scando-Romani, which is kind of a mixture of different Scandinavian languages with the Romani language as well. We can go into Finland, where we have the Finnish Kale Roma. They speak the Finnish Kale language, and they're very distinguishable for their unique cultural dress. Next, let's go all the way down back into Germany and Central Europe and the Germanic Europe area, where we can talk about the Sinti people. The Sinti were the first Romani people to enter the German cultural sphere, and because of that, their language was very much influenced by German. So Sinti Romani has a lot of German influences, but it's not exactly a mixed language. Now, the Sinti live all over Central Europe, especially in Germany, Italy, Austria, Czechia, all the way down even to the western parts of Romania. You may know some famous Sinti people from my videos like Rukeli and Filomena France. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the word Sinti comes from Sindhi, from the Sindh province of Pakistan. However, that is not true. The inflection of the word Sinti in the Romani language shows that it is actually a European loanword, and historical sources show that the Sinti actually used to refer to themselves by the historic endonym of Kale. Still, a lot of Sinti do see themselves as distinct from other Roma, even though we do have the same origin. Romani groups called the Burgenland Roma, who come from Burgenland. Now, over here in Bohemia, we have a group with a very unfortunate history. The Bohemian Roma, or Laleri, had over 90% of their people killed during the Holocaust, and the Bohemian Romani dialect was killed off to extinction. The remaining Bohemian Roma either assimilated out or moved far, far away. Neighboring Poland, we have the largest Romani group there, which is the Polska Romani people. You may know them from my video about Baba Noncia, who was a Polska Romani woman, and they speak the Polska Romani dialect. In the south of Poland, on the Polish-Slovak border, live the Berdzitka Roma, who have their own Romani dialect. They are closely related to the Slovak Servika, not to be confused with Servitka Roma, who also have their own Romani dialect. Also from Slovakia are the Bashalde, or the Hungarian Slovak Roma. They are well-known musicians, and they speak their own Romani dialect as well, closely related to Romungre. Now, a lot of them actually live in the Midwestern United States. A lot of Romani people actually do live in the United States as well. I forgot to mention, but the Romani Chal have a large population in the United States as well as the whole English-speaking world, either due to migration or due to slavery. Now, down in the Czech Republic, we have a lot of groups that just identify as Czech Roma or just Roma in general. And that holds true for a lot of these Central European countries, like Slovenia as well, all the way down to Italy. Most of these groups either identify as Sinti or Roma, and they have their own little small familial subgroups as well within those. Going down into Hungary, we have the Romungre, or the Hungarian Roma. They are also well-known musicians, and the Romani dialect is influenced by Hungarian. However, it's not really influenced by Romanian because they are not Vlach Roma. But a lot of Roma in Hungary are Vlach Roma. One such group are the Lovara, or the Lovari people. They are Vlach Roma from Hungary, meaning their ancestors came from Romania after the abolition of slavery. Their name, Lovara, comes from their historical profession of horse dealers, and their Romani dialect is closely related to other Vlach Romani dialects, meaning that it has Romanian influence. Another prominent Romani subgroup in Hungary are the Bayash. Now, their ancestors were also enslaved in Romania, and for that reason, they do not speak the Romani language because their ancestors were at the risk of having their tongues cut off if they spoke the Romani language close to the slave masters in the house. They actually speak an archaic version of Romanian. They are closely related to the Rudari in Romania and the Ludars in the United States, all coming from that same Boyash group. These are Romani people who do not speak the Romani language, but instead speak an archaic version of Romanian that also has some Hungarian, Serbian, and Romani words within it. Now our journey takes us to my home country, Romania, where there is a lot of Romani groups, so strap in. Let's start off in Transylvania with the Gabor, or the Gabors, who are also in a way sort of Hungarian Roma, because their oral tradition is that they were gifted that land that which they live on by a Hungarian lord named Gabor. That's where their name comes from. They're also very endogamous and traditional people. You'll often notice them by their distinctive traditional clothing. Now in Transylvania, there's also Romungre, different types of Hungarian Roma, and then there's also different types of Vlach Roma as well. The Gabor are also Vlach Roma, even though they do have a lot of Hungarian influence. All over Romania, the biggest Romani group are the Călderari, who are also called Calderaș, and a lot of different names as well. We also have our own Romani name, however, I will not be sharing that. This is also my Romani group. Now, these are the coppersmiths, the historic coppersmiths, who would go around different villages fixing the cauldrons. Now, that's where the name Călderar comes from the cauldrons. Next, we have the Ursari, who are the bear trainers. Their name comes from Urs, bear, and they're also called the Ricinara in Romani. Ricci meaning bear. If you speak Hindi, you might recognize that word. We also have the Argintar, the silversmiths, the Aurar, the goldsmiths, the Florar, the flower sellers, the Lăutar, the historic singers who are known for their taraf bands. We also have the Spoitori, who are Turkish Roma, who migrated to Romania during Ottoman times. And they have a lot of Turkish holidays like Erdelezi, and they dance Kucek, which they call Sistemu. We also have the Fierar, blacksmiths, Colar, carpet makers, Ciurar, sieve makers, Cortorar, who are the tent dwellers, and more. Romania has literally hundreds of occupational different subgroups. I'll list some of them out over here, but I can't get them all. Continuing on with Vlach Roma, there's a lot of Vlach Roma living all over the world, especially in the United States and the Americas in general, basically. One of those groups is the Machoaya. The Machoaya come from Serbia, the Machoa region of Serbia, but most of them actually do live in the United States. Now, the Machoaya are Vlach Roma as well, and they speak a very similar dialect to the Calderaș. In Serbia, we also do have another Vlach Romani group called the Gurbeti, not to be confused with Gorbati, which is a subgroup of the Luli that I discussed earlier.
Cotor nevimata. Ando trstenico artisticano ci dipe e romengo taio culturaco mascaripe bish verš si kavel kozom si barvali taizuralia mari cultura.
Moving up north to Ukraine, we have the Servitka Roma, who are Roma that are said to have originated in Serbia, but now they mostly live in Ukraine. In Ukraine, we also have the Crimean Roma, who are located in Crimea, and they have their own unique Romani dialect as well. There's also a lot of Ruska Roma and just general Ukrainiansky Roma as well. Now, if we go up a little bit, we get to the Baltic countries. Baltic people have their own Baltic Roma groups as well, and there's also different Baltic Romani dialect as well. In Russia, the main Romani group are called the Ruska Roma or Haladikta Roma, which means soldier in the Russian language. Now, the Ruska Roma are very well known for the Roman theater, and they also speak their own Romani dialect, which is closely related to the Ukrainian Romani dialects. Coming back down the Black Sea, we go to the coast of Romania and Bulgaria called Dobroja. There we find the Kalaiji, who you may have seen in different documentaries on YouTube. They, along with the Burguji in Bulgaria, are some of the first Romani groups to enter that Bulgarian landscape, and they are also very Turkified because of that Ottoman time that they spent. These groups speak their own Balkan Romani dialects. The Burguji live all over the Balkans, especially in Bulgaria, and they speak their own Romani dialect that is very Turkified, along with the Kalaiji and along with the Horaha. These groups together are called the Dasikane Roma by their neighboring Horahane neighbors, Dasikane meaning Christian. Because even though these groups were heavily influenced by neighboring Muslim and Turkish cultures, they still do remain Orthodox Christian to this day. Now let's talk about the Horahane, or the Muslim Roma. Horahane actually means Turkish Roma because they were heavily influenced by the Ottoman Empire and the Turks. Now they live all over the Balkan region, and they are split into a lot of different groups. So Horahane is very much an umbrella term for Muslim Roma groups. But one of the biggest Muslim Roma groups are called the Arliye, and they speak the Arli Romani dialect. That comes from the Turkish word yerli, meaning settled or native. And in Greece, they're also known as the Erlides. And the Arli dialect is one of the most popular Romani dialects alongside Calderaș Romani. The Horahane also have different occupational subgroups, just like the Vlach Roma. For example, Sepcides, basket makers, Avcides, bear trainers. These subgroups all have different dialects of Balkan Romani, like Sepcides Romani. In Greece, we also have the Fandar, or the soldier Roma. And Greek Roma have a lot of different Romani subgroups as well, but a lot of Greek Roma just identify as Roma. Now going into Albania, we have the Ashkali, who are assimilated Albanian Roma. So they also only speak Albanian. They do not speak Romani. And some of them do not identify as Roma. However, their origins are with Romani people. Same with the Balkan Egyptians. In Turkey, the Romani people are called Romanlar, or they're also called Çingene. And they're also part of those Horahane occupational subgroups. So they have occupational subgroups that end in IDS. And in Turkey, there's also Lom populations in the northeast and Dom populations in the southeast. Actually concludes our video. We are done. I know that was a lot of groups, but I really hoped this helped clear some things up for you and gave you a detailed explanation on the different Romani subgroups. If you liked this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and follow for more content. And if you're Romani and I didn't mention your group, make sure to leave it down in the comments and let us know. Just a quick bonus, there are a group of Bulgarian Romani people who during the Ottoman Empire went to Iran. They're now called the Zargari people. That just goes to show that Romani people have migrated all over the world, have intermingled, have mixed, so you can't really know what Romani subgroup a person is just by the region they're from. That's it for today. Jade Vlesa.